how many burgers per day did you flip? And people
Exactly.
can't argue with numbers. Look into prompting, not just like quick prompts, but
Yeah.
like detailed prompts. The calendar is my Bible. You get your ticket, you work on your ticket, narrate what you're doing as you're doing it. The fact is, work cannot speak. It does not have a voice.
Yeah.
LinkedIn recommendations,
Yep.
they're a great place, very underutilized. The clouds parted, the light bulb went off. What I call the NNQ system. It stands for names, numbers, and quotes.
Yep. Today at C3 Dev Festival by Git Nation, we're in Amsterdam with Anna J. McDougall, a software engineer, author, and speaker. Anna has guided hundreds of career changers into tech, and her book, You Belong in Tech, quickly became an Amazon #1 bestseller and career guide new releases in July 2022. In 2023, she delivered a TEDx talk at the Technical University of Berlin titled Finding and Proving Your Value as a Career Changer. As a technical speaker and Google Women Techmakers Ambassador, Anna is passionate about breaking down complex topics and making them accessible to people from all backgrounds. Today, we'll explore her journey from opera singing to software engineering, her 3-step advice for beginners in tech, how to stand out in the job market, and what a manager's day really looks like, as well as tips on time management and AI implementation. Hi, I'm Evangelos, a tech content creator and a software engineer, and let's jump into our conversation. Hello, and we are here at Git Nation with Anna McDougall, and we're going to break down her story and why she's here at Git Nation today. So Anna, welcome to today. How have you found it so far?
Yeah, so far so good. The vibe is excellent.
Brilliant. So we're going to get straight into your journey.
Yes, love it.
I'm going to fire out the questions and hopefully just give us the best answer you can.
I'll try my best.
Can you describe your journey from opera singer to software engineering?
The story doesn't technically start there.
Okay.
So the story technically starts when I was 8. I learned how to write HTML. This is 1995. I'm giving away my age, but that's cool. We were writing HTML on Notepad, so you'd literally like just write it, like type it straight in, and then save it as an HTML document, and then you've got a website.
In a Notepad IDE? Even older than that.
It's literally just like a plain text document. Like it's nothing. There's no tools. So that's how I learned originally. I did some software development at high school, but I was the only girl in the class. The boys were nice, but they also didn't actively include me. I mean, they were in their own teenage worlds. So I don't blame them, but that's how it was. And I ended up doing other subjects. I was good at other things. I went into communications and media and then did my first career change into opera. So I was an opera singer for 7 years. I moved to Germany to pursue that career. And then in 2008, I became pregnant with my first child. And I kind of had to take this moment, like I took this moment to kind of like take a step back and go, okay, do I really want to be a singer? I'd always felt a little bit out of place. Music didn't click for my brain very easily or naturally. Like some people, they just get it. And so I was like, okay, what else could I do? Like, what else is there? I thought about doing voice therapy and becoming a voice therapist, but I'm also living in Germany where, I have an accent in German. I can speak it, but I have an accent. So it also would be kind of weird to be like a vocal therapist, like trying to correct other people's speech when I've, I don't know. 100%. So, and also I'm an ambitious person, and with a good job like that, you get in and you do it. Right? There's no levels, so to speak. And so, of course, I naturally came to software engineering. There was a huge demand at that time for engineers. And I went back and said, okay, well, I've been meaning to look at code again for a long time. Let's see if I'm any good.
Beautiful.
And unlike music, it clicked exactly. Right? It was like I started with JavaScript, as a lot of beginners do. And it was just like, the clouds parted, the light bulb went off, like all of that kind of stuff. It was like I was where I was supposed to be. And then I did, in Germany, they have these they have boot camps, but they also have these longer, like 9 to 12 month courses where you study 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. So I did one of those to kind of get my certification. And during that time, I got hired in my first junior role.
Beautiful.
And from there I went to team lead, and from there I did a bit of project management again, and then I moved into my current role as director of product and engineering.
Oh, nice.
So it's kind of just
So is it accurate to say that the transition from opera singer to developer has been relatively smooth for you?
For me, yes. I mean, I feel very lucky in that, again, for me, code clicked for me. I know it doesn't for everyone. So I felt lucky in that sense. Also because I used some of my maternity leave to learn to code. When I came into the course I was doing, I was already ahead of most of the students. So that also meant that it acted more as like reinforcing the learning. And I also worked as the course tutor. So I also like helped tutor the other students. And, as you know, with senior engineers as well, or any engineer really, when you are helping other people to learn software engineering, you end up learning a lot yourself.
Reinforces in your
anyway,
mind,
so I feel like that helped me a lot. also because I took on social media and I was tweeting a lot at the time about my journey and what I was learning and what I was building, and I was blogging and I was making YouTube videos. When I got hired, I already had a bit of a reputation. Actually, I got my first job through a Twitter post that went like, not viral, but it spread very well. And so that's kind of how I got my first job. So a lot of things went right, but also it's because I did put a lot of like extra into it, and because it did kind of come quite naturally to me. But a lot of the people who also were in the course with me also got hired as engineers. I do feel like the fact that Germany has this great system that helps pay for the education of people to do this.
Wonderful.
So I was still earning my jobless benefits because I was coming out of maternity leave and I didn't have a job. So I was earning jobless benefits while learning. I didn't have to pay like, you know, tens of thousands for this course or whatever. So I was very lucky to be in that system and to be in that position where I could take advantage of that. And I think I've paid it back to them by now. So I think they got their money's worth.
Perfect. So for anyone in your shoes, back when you're looking to code or learning to code, what advice would you give them to get to the position you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. This is exactly why I wrote my book. So this is my comfort zone. I'm happy to talk about this. So my book is broken into 3 categories, and that's how I tend to think about the journey of people getting into a career from other careers, or career in software engineering from other careers. The first is, of course, you have to learn the technical skills, right? It's a technical job. You've got to learn the technical skills if that's what you want to do, right? If you don't want to go into, if you want to be a scrum master or a product owner or something, okay, there's leeway there. But if you want to be a software engineer, you have to learn to code, you have to learn how software works, you know, you have to understand those things, and it's kind of essential. So that's step 1, of course. You have to learn it. Step 2 is you have to create, or what I would advise doing is to create a network to find communities that support you. For example, when I was doing my course, I kind of naturally had a community, which was the other students. But it was also during shutdown, so there were a lot of Discord communities for coders. There are a lot of Twitter communities. There are a lot of LinkedIn communities. There are some YouTube courses where people end up creating Discord channels to connect with each other. There are lots of these kinds of things around. Also, now that we're not locked down, there are conferences, meetups, events where you can go and meet people in person and connect to them and say, hey, this is what I'm learning, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm looking for. And my advice is always to try to think about, firstly, what do you bring to the table that's different? So the fact that I was an opera singer was actually something I did mention on purpose because people would remember that. People weren't going to go away forgetting that. Even though it doesn't
relate to the job.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, we're like, oh wow, that's interesting.
Maybe
like
some transferable skills, maybe somewhere.
Absolutely. And then I would get those questions. So always think about like, what makes you different? What makes you unique? And you talk about that. Even if you're an introvert or if someone who's not comfortable talking to people, I say go to an event, try to just talk to one new person.
Perfect advice.
Just have a little goal, like set a little goal, and make those connections before you need a job. Because once you need a job, you will come off as desperate. You can't help it. It's not your fault. It's just how it is.
Yeah, of course.
They will smell it. But if you're just learning, you say, oh yeah, I'm still learning. I've got 6 months left, or you know, I'm still learning. I want to start looking in about a year. You know, it's much more relaxed. People don't feel pressure to like help you. It just keeps things a bit easy. And most importantly, ask people about themselves and what they want. Because if you start creating these network connections and you find, like, let's say we're chatting and you say, oh yeah, I'm really hoping to get better in, I don't know, React. I say, oh, you know what? I actually have a great friend who's doing like a React tutorial at the moment and does one-on-one sessions on React. Maybe I should put you in touch. You would appreciate it. You'd be like, wow, thanks. Like that'd be great. Even if nothing comes out of it. It's still like a connection that I can make for you, and people remember that. So try to always look for ways that you can help other people, and that will often come back to you in indirect and sometimes direct ways.
Sort of like investing in people, not expecting returns today, but later down the line.
Exactly. You can't go in like expecting anything. You just have to offer kindness and try to connect people, and that usually pays off dividends in the investment scenario. So then the third step is, of course, the actual looking for a job. So you need to build skills on interviewing. You need to build skills on like how to write your CV, how to write a cover letter. A lot of this stuff comes down to practice, especially for interviews. I think too many people are humble. One of the things I spoke about in my talk at C3 was about how a lot of engineers take in this belief of the work will speak for itself. They make their portfolio, they put their projects there and like, great,
have a look.
Done.
Whatever happens, happens.
You know, but the fact is work cannot speak. It does not have a voice. if you just put it there, it's like a tree falling in the woods and there's no one around to hear it, right? You have to be the voice for your work. So you do the work, but then you have to be in those interviews saying, look at all this great shit I've done. Sorry, look at all this great stuff I've done. And this is how I did it. And this is what I balanced. And this is how I can work with people. And this is how I bring value to a whole team. Not just to the engineering. And if you can do that stuff, and if you can communicate about code, not just write good code, but talk about what you're doing and why, you will find that the job appears, but you have to be able to prove it. You have to go in there with proof, and you have to fight for yourself and forget humility for a second. Be humble in your private life all you like, but when you're in a job interview,
it's all about you.
You got to brag. Like that's just the name of the game, unfortunately.
How important do you think communication is in all stages of the development job?
Essential. One thing I've seen in a lot of job interviews is people saying, I mean, the code is good and they seem to know what they're talking about, but I don't feel like we could pair program together. Like, I don't feel like I would follow what he's saying, or I don't think she would tell me what she's trying to achieve properly. Like, I don't think like there's a good open line of communication there. I've seen people be rejected for it despite being good technically, right? I think there is a tendency for people to stereotype engineering as being a solo job, like a thing where you're like, the stereotype, you know, like the kid in the basement, you know?
Just coding, put up everything.
Two screens, maybe three. You know, I've got 3 screens, so I had to actually do that. But yeah, that's the stereotype. And people don't realize, I didn't realize, when you get in there, it's a team effort. You know, everyone is talking to everyone throughout the day. Hey, do you remember how to access this thing? Or like, what was the key for this service that we're using? I haven't been on it in ages. Or I can't get this code to deploy, or I can't get this to run on my machine. Like, what am I missing here? Like, the Docker container's giving me an error. What can I do? You know, it's constant. And yes, hopefully you have times where you can hyper-focus and like really get into the code as a developer. But a lot of it is meetings, a lot of it is pair programming. You must develop the skill of talking about code. The exercise I recommend usually for people is to, when you're at home, even just doing your side projects or whatever, just narrate what you're doing as you're doing it. Because that's essentially all pair programming is, right? You're like, okay, I can see here that I need to pass this value into this React component. So I need to make sure that it's, you know, here in the function call or whatever it is, you know, or it needs to have a unique key. So I need to make sure that I'm generating a UUID here. You know, you just talk through what you're doing. It doesn't have to be exciting. It doesn't have to be groundbreaking. Just keep talking, you know? And I know that's easy for me as an extrovert to say, but it is a skill that you need for job interviews, absolutely, as
100%, 100%. Is there any tips or lessons that you found, especially whilst you was looking for jobs, that really helped you find your first job, in a sense?
Well, I was very lucky, as I said, in that like my first job kind of came to me, but I've worked with a lot of people who are looking for their first jobs, and they've almost always come out of connections. The fact is that just applying to junior positions online, you're competing against hundreds or thousands of people. If you know even one person inside a company, you are better off going to them and saying like, hey, I see that you're advertising a junior position. Are you part of that team? Like, do you know what they're looking for? Because I think I would fit the profile. What should I do here to apply? And they might just say, oh, just apply through the portal. And they might, that might just be that.
Send you on your way.
But there's a chance they also say, oh yeah, send me your CV. I'll forward it to the recruiter. And then instantly you're on a kind of short list, right? Having those connections, as I said, before you need them, they can pay off.
Massively.
The other thing is something, again, I spoke about is what I call the NNQ system. It's also in my book. It stands for names, numbers, and quotes. So whenever you're submitting a cover letter or you're writing in your CV about what you've achieved, but especially when you're contacting recruiters, you always name drop. John told me to apply for this position because he works in that team already and he thought it could be a good fit. Okay, straight away they're like, oh, she knows John. John's a good developer. Maybe, yeah, exactly. It helps you get in the door. So names always help with that first stage, especially. Numbers, so you're always talking about the impact you had. So not just what you've done, right? A lot of people, their CVs say like, oh, I worked at McDonald's, flipped burgers, took orders, poured drinks. It's like, no, how many burgers per day did you flip? Did you get employee of the month at any point? Like, you know, just list any little achievements that you did. Try to use numbers to back yourself up. The example I give is, as an opera singer, I performed in many stages around the world. I performed with lots of people and in many different languages.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. But what if I told you that I performed in 3 different continents with over 120 people on stage in 7 different languages?
That's how you market yourself.
Suddenly you're like, whoa, okay, that's, if you say many a lot, it's like, okay, what does that mean? If you start giving numbers, people are like, whoa,
She means
that's
business.
cool,
Yeah,
And
exactly.
people can't argue with numbers, right?
True.
Numbers are unarguable.
Exactly.
And the same goes for quotes, that's the cue. So if someone has said, let's say I've worked with Sarah, and Sarah says, oh, I loved working with Anna. She was an amazing manager. She always lifted up her team and got us across the line. That's going to look a lot better than me saying, I'm an amazing manager who gets people across the line and lifts people up. It means more coming from another person.
It's credible.
Yeah, exactly. It builds credibility. It can't be denied.
Exactly.
And the same for developers. You know, if you've had a mentor, so you're a junior, let's say you don't have any work experience, you're looking for your first position, maybe you've had a mentor or a fellow student or a teacher, you know, who can say, when Anna was learning to code, I could always tell that she took up new ideas quickly, she was able to implement them, and she also helped others to understand the same concepts. Well, suddenly that means a lot more about me being a team player and me being a fast learner.
Yes, 100%.
And I don't need to be there like, I'm a fast learner, I'm a team player, because everyone's going to say that.
Exactly.
You know, it makes you stand out. So those would be my big tips for like getting noticed during the application process.
So it cycles back to this whole self-promotion talk and how crucial it is to make sure that you prove what you're about, but you also have other people to prove what you're about. It just makes the whole process a lot much easier, doesn't it?
Exactly. You build that network, you build those quotes, those recommendations. One thing I did most recently, so I'm about to change jobs, and when I was applying for a new job, I would have my CV, it's a 2-page CV, and then under it, I literally had a page of quotes from people about how awesome I am. I know that sounds like I'm bragging, but like, it helps. And like some of those people moved on to positions at well-known tech companies. So having their names in my CV, kind of saying like, yeah, I am whatever, an engineering manager at Slack, and I think Anna is great. Like that helps me.
Of course.
And it's undeniable. And the names are there, they know that they can be contacted, and I know I can rely on them 100%. As well. So use LinkedIn recommendations, that's the other thing. So you can do those little quotes, like not like anything from 1 or 2 lines to 2 or 3 paragraphs, I think you can enter on LinkedIn recommendations. They're a great place, very underutilized. People don't use them a lot, but I know for a fact that recruiters look at them a lot. Get as many as you can.
Perfect.
Everyone you've ever worked with, even if it's at McDonald's, you know, get them to fill them in, you know.
Perfect. So what's the day-to-day life at work for you? What does it look like?
Well, I'm a director now, so it's always different. Like some days I'm preparing a talk, and that can take the whole day sometimes. Other days I'm in and out of meetings. Other days I'm doing career coachings for engineers. Sometimes we're doing budget meetings. What else? I hold workshops on public speaking for engineers. So I also do that. So I mean, it can be very, very different all the time. It's actually, I'd say for anyone who is in engineering and thinking about management, I would say that's one of the challenges in engineering. You get your ticket, you work on your ticket. It's very nice. Like it gives you focus. When you move into team leadership or management or something along those lines, it very much becomes a lot of context switching, and you will reach the end of the day and be like, I'm so exhausted. I've done so much, but wait, what have I actually done? You know, and you just have to trust that you are doing things. Like it is stuff is happening.
Exactly.
But it's much harder to feel that progress within yourself.
It's not
so
as easily quantifiable.
Yeah, exactly. So it's nice in that like you have more impact because you're not just, I like to say it's not a one-to-one relationship, it's a one-to-many relationship because you're influencing many people instead. So that's nice to kind of have that influence and that impact on the teams. But on the other hand, it is hard on a more personal level, and you know the old saying, it's lonely at the top, and it is because you know you have smaller or no team. You know, you're kind of just working on your own, working out what's next, working out how to go to the next step. So my day-to-day, like, to go back to your question, my day-to-day life is varied.
Okay.
But I like a challenge. So with my new role is going to be with a much smaller company, so about 120 people. And I know that's going to be like full on. Like it's going to be a lot more kind of go, much more intense, and I'm looking forward to that because that suits me.
Wonderful. So even in management to software engineering, time management is an incredibly important thing. How do you go about managing your time?
the calendar is my Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that happens in my life is in my calendar.
Mm-hmm.
I have a private calendar in Google, which I share with my husband. And I sync that to my Outlook calendar, which is where all my work stuff goes. And basically, if it's not in my calendar, it doesn't exist.
Gotcha.
Like I read this great book called The Organized Mind. And one of the things it pushed, because I used to be very unorganized, disorganized, whatever. And it said one of the things is to get as much stuff out of your head as possible. Like put it into systems, because brains are not reliable. Systems are, you know, so use to-do lists, use calendars. I use a calendar as my to-do list. I block whenever I know I need to work on something that doesn't have a meeting attached to it. I will actually block the time in my calendar. It'll be like a half-hour slot, and I'll say, okay, this is when I'm, I don't know, filling in the reviews or whatever. And so I do it that way to make sure that everything's in there. That way you can also kind of move them around if you need to. But yeah, the calendar is
the go-to.
It's my Bible.
Cool. So we'll transition over to AI. Do you use AI at your company? What's your opinions of it? Do you think it's going to take our jobs? What's the rundown for you?
Oh, no pressure. I guess the short answer is it depends. And no one knows. For my company, we are using it in a lot of features. We're using a lot of features for journalists, for example. Maybe it suggests headlines to them or drafts article texts for topics that they're not so interested in writing about, so that it makes it quicker and easier for them. Obviously, all of this stuff still needs to be checked by a human. Two other examples I can think of, alt text for images. You know, it's super important for accessibility, but does sometimes get overlooked. And this makes sure that there is at least a draft text there for all images. Again, needs to be checked, but it's there. Metadata for images and for videos. So categorizing, tagging our inventory for journalists and editors to use. That's very important. But also from the machine learning side, you know, we also have, for example, news recommendation systems. When you go to a news website, what you see is actually different than what everyone else sees. It's automatically updating based on what it thinks you'll be interested in, based on what you've looked at before, all that kind of stuff. So we do that as well. We also have text-to-speech systems, and now thanks to LLMs, we're doing auto-translation, or we're trying to implement auto-translation of German content into, for example, English, Turkish, other big communities that exist in Germany. There's a lot of things that we're doing in that sense, using it as a tool. Will it replace our jobs? I think the answer is not yet. The general consensus among the people I speak to is that its usefulness right now is as a tool, as a tool for developers. In general, I would say somewhere between 15 to 30% improvement in efficiency with coders and developers who use AI to help. The other thing that I'm hearing, though, is that it's not very useful to developers if they're not already understanding what's happening in the code. So to me, you know, when I'm putting my management hat on and thinking, okay, what does this mean in terms of hiring juniors and training people? Then I start thinking, okay, it's going to be more important than ever to train people on systems and on architecture and things like this. How does data move between different layers? How are we actually working with this information? Because if the implementation, the actual coding part of it becomes easier thanks to AI, that's fine. But if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how to prompt the AI correctly, you also don't know how to check that the code is actually doing what you asked it to do. And that is still important, because an AI system, you might feed it a problem, but it doesn't know the rest of your code base, at least not yet. I think there's still a lot that would need to happen before whole jobs are disappearing to it. I know there are some really money-driven, let's say, companies and managers who would love to fire whole development teams and just use AI. We are, I think, still years away from something like that. I think my guess, if it is something that we want and if it's something that we go towards, my guess is it would be about 4 to 5 years before we're at that point. So, I mean, with that said, if you're a developer and you're thinking about your job, and you're thinking about your career, I would definitely be saying look into systems, look into prompting, not just like quick prompts, but like detailed prompts. Look into understanding software architecture more, because to me, and this is maybe a little bit too philosophical, but to me, learning how to prompt AI is just kind of like a next level abstraction. You know how like Kotlin, for example, is like an abstraction of Java in a way, you know, to me, AI is just an abstraction of Kotlin in this example. Again, you kind of need to learn to program, with the AI. It's just the next level thing. Like we're not writing in COBOL anymore, are we? So
closer to natural language, isn't it?
Yeah, that too. But which also opens up some opportunities in terms of accessibility and making the development of tech easier for people, which admittedly is maybe not so good for software developers because it means that our wages might go down because it's easier, but at the same time, I think it could be a good thing for society, especially because I don't want to say tech has been very gatekeepy, but there are definitely gatekeepers in tech. And I think removing those barriers is key to making tech accessible to everyone. And I'm a strong believer that if you want tech to be built for everyone, you need tech to be built by everyone. That's part of my kind of life philosophy. So in that sense, I think there are a lot of good opportunities coming. But again, we're not there yet. We still need developers. We still need architects. I think the biggest risk is for junior positions. But again, if you're a manager who's thinking about the future, you also need to be thinking how you're building talent, not just what talent you have right now. And that's really just up to management teams to be on board with that.
That's perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. We have 3 quick Blitz questions to ask you, and just answer them as best you can.
Sure.
What's one piece of advice you'd give to someone considering a career change into tech?
Know your value. I think it's very easy for people to forget that being a career changer can be a positive thing. So many people talk about focusing on technical stuff that they forget to focus on what makes them different. In the end, people who come straight out of a computer science degree, they will have their strengths, but they will also have their weaknesses. And you as a career changer, you might have different strengths and weaknesses. And both of you will provide value to a company in different ways. And you need to be aware of what those differences are so that you can sell them effectively in a job interview, because the managers will be thinking about this already. So you got to beat them to the punch. You got to already be one step ahead and be like, look, I might not know as much about how to write database diagrams, but when it comes to motivating a team, I'm the person you want there.
Exactly.
And there's, a junior straight out of a computer science degree might not be able to provide that. They might, but they might not. So you need to kind of know what your strengths and weaknesses are, but don't be scared to bring in your other career as part of the evidence, if you want, for what those skills are.
Again, all about that self-promotion. Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly. What's a book apart from your own that has significantly influenced your career?
Ooh, that's a good question. Probably Clean Code. I mean, I know like there are split opinions on it, but I do think that it's a great starting point for, especially for juniors, to get a feel for how they can make things in a way that is going to be more human readable. I remember even just in the introduction, there's this great picture about like what makes good code, and it's when like there's only like 2 or 3 swear words instead of like 20 swear words. So then it's like, okay, that's the angle you should be going for. The general philosophy of making functions simple and easy and human readable, I think those kind of principles helped me a lot when I was still learning. So I think that's definitely something I would recommend to people.
Are you a big fan of comments?
Of comments? What do you mean?
Because I've heard a lot of people thinking, or saying even.
Oh, commenting in code.
Exactly.
I was thinking like Instagram. I was like, I guess, like, sure, leave a comment. Commenting code. It's hit and miss. I think, for one, you know what comments I hate is the to-do comments. Don't leave to-do comments. If it's a to-do, it should go in the backlog. It should not be in your code. But I don't mind a comment if something is confusing. Like, we try to make things human readable. Sometimes it's just not going to be possible, right? Either you're working with someone else's function names, or you've got a certain database that you're working with, or a certain API you're working with where you have to use their naming convention and it doesn't fit with yours, and then there's a bit of confusion there. There can be some weird things like that where I think comments can help clarify things. But in general, I do think the code should do most of the speaking. That'd be my approach.
Gotcha. Evan, the last question is, what's your favorite programming language and why?
I love Kotlin. I love Kotlin because I learned JavaScript first, then Java, then Kotlin, and then TypeScript. And to me, Kotlin is like the love child of Java and TypeScript.
I agree.
And I really like working with it. I said I'm a manager now, so I haven't worked with it in like 2 years. I feel a bit of a fraud, like talking about my love for a language I haven't used in 2 years. But I do think it's like, it's got the solid foundations of Java that I think keep it like strong and reliable. But it's got that kind of bit more flexibility, a bit more room to move fast and to make code fast. Like you don't have to write getters and setters and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of nice things in Kotlin that just quality of life stuff that makes it really nice to work with. And I prefer Spring Boot over Node. So that's also like a thing.
Perfect. Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks.
And that is it.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Boom.